Let's get some live pictures back in Israel because we've got some more information from the Israeli Prime Minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, where he has said that the early parts of this offensive to try to rid the country of militants that cross the border, according to the New York Times, he has said that this is almost over and the military will then turn its attention to what they call offensive operations, those being an attempt to move into Gaza. Now, how far they move into Gaza and what the consequences of all of that are the stakes in this game, for want of a better term. We'll get to those in a moment or two's time. I also just quickly want to say to the many Australians who are watching this from lots of different angles, but certainly about the people that they love in this part of the world, I want you to write this telephone number down. 1300 555 135. 1300 555 135. That is the Department of Foreign Affairs Emergency Consular Service. Please do not ring this for anything insignificant, but if you do have information or want to know about information about family that you believe may well be affected by what is taking place, both in Israel and in Gaza, please, 1300 555 135. Domestic politics plus the international situation we'll deal with for the next few minutes. Then Warren Mundine again about The Voice. James Ashby's the Chief of Staff to Pauline Hanson and One Nation, and Stephen Conroy. Among other things, of course, the former Defence spokesperson for the Labor Party. Lads, hello. I'm sorry that there's so much happening in the world we need to keep across, but that is the nature of the job. So, Stephen, I'll start with you. Before we talk about the past 24 hours, let's look into the potential of the next 24 hours. Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, has made it very clear that he expects this to be lengthy. He said that the war will be lengthy. It will be against both Hamas, which of course is Gaza, but also Hezbollah, which has the capacity to strike from other places other than Gaza. People who live in the settlements have been told to return deeper into Israel, and then what happens with the strip of land that is Gaza. We'll get to that in a moment or two's time before I explain to people about some of the history of this for those that are partly watching along. But what are your concerns about the next 24 hours? Because these past 24 hours have been bad enough, but as we know, it's a powder keg and everyone responds to everyone else.
Well, that's right. I mean, this is, pretty much an unprovoked attack. I mean, clearly it's orchestrated, it's coordinated, and Iran appear to have their fingerprints all over it. I am genuinely surprised. The Israeli intelligence is one of the most effective intelligence services in the world. It's proven that consistently, and frankly, it has to protect its people. So this is a real shock to the system. I think Israel will respond with lethal force where it can. I mean, you just got to look at the barbaric acts that are taking place. Taking hostages, threatening to kill them all, parading women naked in the streets. There's videos of this already up online. So this is a horrendous situation. There was moves across the Middle East to try and reach further settlements with the government of Israel to try and help normalise it. It's outside of traditional Australian interests or where we've played any sort of role, if we've ever had any sort of role, and many would say that we don't. What's pleasing to see is both political parties in Australia standing rock solid with a commitment to stand beside and behind the State of Israel, its right to exist and its right to defend its borders. And it absolutely needs that support at a time like this.
Yeah, now, again, James, I'll get you in a second here, but I want to turn to our colleagues in the UK who have set a nice explainer for those of us that, rather than, again, me muddling through the difficult history of this particular part of the world, here is part of the explanation about not just what starts today, but what has been a long lead-in.
Many of the scenes in Israel are shocking and terrifying. But if you understand the overall geography of today's events, you get a sense of how cataclysmic this already is for Israelis, Palestinians, but the wider region too. Now, in the early hours of the morning, sirens warning of rockets went off in southern Israel, in the areas surrounding Gaza and Tel Aviv. This video is from Jerusalem. You can hear the sirens ringing out through the city. And this is why. See the rockets fired through the dawn sky. Hamas claimed they'd fired 5,000, but the Israel Defense Forces, the IDF, said it was more like half that number. Now, the rockets were one thing, but what followed was more extraordinary, unprecedented, really. Hamas militants gathered on the border, on the security border, and they attacked the bases along it, here in Nahal Oz and here in Kerem Shalom. They crossed over the border into Israel itself, with groups seen travelling over on motorbike. And they went even further, advancing into Israel and taking settlements. Verified footage shows the progress Hamas made on foot. They got to Sderot, deep inside Israel's interior, and this is the scene they left behind at a bus stop. Gruesome scenes indeed. But it came from the air too. This is just over the border, and it shows a drone attack on an Israeli tank. As we've seen in Ukraine, explosives dropped from drones have become a key part of this assault too. And Hamas have also taken hostages, again in violation of international humanitarian law. This sign says, "Welcome to the Coordination Office." It's a department in the Israeli Ministry of Defense. And we can't say whether the people being held in that video are Israeli soldiers or military. They could also be civil servants. And the IDF has confirmed that civilians and soldiers are being held as hostages in Gaza.